Okay, now we're recording.
Alrighty, so I had a quick question for you, Paul. Brian is still part of the Dockyard Lumen channel, although as a guest, I think you like come through every once in a while just to see. Are you planning on doing that too, or if I need to contact you for any reason? Don't know what that would be, but if I did, should I just use the?
The email that you used the other day works. It's the @fastmail.com
Okay.
one. That's my primary contact info, and then I probably won't be joining the Dockyard Slack for any reason, but I will be in the the Lumen one. That's in the Elixir Slack. So if you need to reach me there, that's an option as well. But email works fine. I'm responsive to that. So.
Okay, cool.
Relate to email, Paul. Did Zaki get a hold of you? He tried, the Japanese Palmy guy. He tried to contact you on your Dockyard email, and I told him to use your Fastmail one instead.
Yeah, I have not heard from him yet since I last spoke to him. But yeah, I'll send him an email and be like, hey, I heard you were trying to get a hold of me. When was that? Was that like last week or something?
I think it was when I was in Brussels. It was on Monday.
Okay.
So, not that much time has passed, but
yeah.
Yeah, I gave him your Paul Schoenfelder at fastmail.com one, and then I told him you were Bitwalker if he hadn't figured that out on the Slack also, since he contacted me instead.
So who wants to start the ball rolling on updates? Usually I tap you, Paul.
Yeah, so Luke's, meeting, our talk was on Friday or Saturday. I don't remember. I was sick basically.
European Saturday, but
weekend. Yeah. I wasn't able to get things wrapped up in time for him because I was hitting some validation errors, trying to lower into LLVM from MLR. I think I know what the problem is. I haven't spent any time on it because I've just been too fucked up. I had the flu basically, so was pretty much out of commission starting Saturday afternoon. But it seems like the issue is that representing types at all in MLIR means that you basically can't use the built-in standard operations without going through your own like mirror versions of them first, because currently it doesn't let you just replace types of things. So I store type metadata that we have for things coming out of EIR in the MLIR type system, and especially for things that are like results from operations that create strongly typed things like tuples and lists and so on. Those types also get propagated. But what was causing issues is that those types then, when they're trying to be translated into LLVM, would not be able to be translated to LLVM properly because some of the types would get updated correctly, but not all of the types. And my various attempts to hack around that in time to get something for Luke ready always ended up in a seg fault deep in LLVM somewhere because something was getting missed. So I was digging around a few other MLIR based projects basically Saturday morning before I went to sleep. And it seems to me like basically every single one of them is doing what I had started to do at the beginning of the project, but held off thinking that it would save time to just avoid going through my own types for no reason. or my own operation types for no reason. So in my EIR dialect and MLIR, I've defined a bunch of the operations that are both present in Hans' implementation of the IR, as well as some additional ones I figured might be needed. So to fix the validation errors, I basically just need to change my uses of the MLIR standard operations to use my essentially wrappers of those operations. And then in my lowering pass, just make sure that I lower all of those. And then that will ensure that all of the type information stuff that needs to be translated together gets lowered together into the LLVM type system without leaving anything dangling. And that's basically it. That's the only obstacle at this point. So this week I should have some time to work on that. I just haven't been able to yet.
Paul, would you have any time on Friday? I'll actually have a Dockyard Friday, and I'd like to just be able to understand how the compiler works. Like,
sure.
Okay. I'll ping you on the Elixir Lang Slack then.
Okay.
You want to use that as a segue to do your update?
Yeah. So I had talks on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday was the Lumen one. It was a 20-minute slot. I had cut a lot about the explanation, just on the assumption that we're to the point where like people don't have to care about how we implemented it, but I still had some details to like bolster. Like I mentioned, we're prop testing because it is come up. There actually were other alternative Beam implementations. There was a Coffee Beam, which was a Beam specifically to work in the Android ecosystem. So not Urjang, because Urjang's kind of dead, but like sort of like how Hans's first version of EIR was like, here is a Beam that works and you can call in it from JavaScript. Same thing here, where like you can use an Erlang system on top of the JVM that Android ships with to do all your logic, but still have a cross to call the APIs. And so he saw it as like reassure people that it's safe, even though it's not Beam. So we might want to still leave the prop test, but probably just cut more and more about implementation details because I had to jump ahead trying to even explain the demos. So I showed the spawn chain, but I didn't get to the full explanation, and I just jumped straight to the DOM, and the video might be up soon because it's already gone through the review system, but you can see where I have to jump ahead. And so I'm probably, since I had the same amount of time for Lone Star, I'm just going to do demos, sort of like how Nerves and Phoenix works now. Like they don't really explain as much about how it's implemented. It is just like, here is how it works. And so I will probably do that for Lone Star. And I did actually show I showed Locke's change to the interpreter and browser demo off by like changing the Erlang very fast when I was past time. So I will probably do that slower and show that one also. And of course, Paul, with hopefully the compiler working, I would show the compiler off for sure then.
Yeah.
But if we have those 3 demos, that'll be most of the time, because like just getting through the part of like explaining why aren't we using Beam, what is WebAssembly, got me like 11 minutes in, so over halfway. So I need to cut that down a lot and just unfortunately assume people know what we're talking about now. Or just like the fact that it's running in the browser is enough.
Like we really need to desperately update the READMEs and just some general project documentation so that we can just point people to that.
Yeah, the only new thing I added was because we knew it was a problem on Hacker News, and I know we have to kind of eye roll Hacker News, but the whole thing about people not understanding that WebAssembly still goes through the JIT, I added a slide for that. Because that's a silly thing to have to fight people on all the time about WebAssembly.
I mean, Hacker News starts even before that. They start complaining about the name right away.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever. PHP Lumen stole Elixir too. Whatever.
Yeah. So I don't. All this to say, I mean, I'm making a joke, but all this to say, don't consider Hacker News comments as something that we should shape our messaging around.
Well, I get that, but like that was a real question. While like all our explanation of
got to cherry pick what's worth paying attention to.
Yeah, what's worth talking about. And I guess maybe WebAssembly, I would just keep the thing about the Blickbolt WebAssembly about the Mozilla dev blog has stuff, show the actual URL instead of just saying it in the comments so that people can like, screenshot, because people do that at conferences now all the time. They take a picture of a slide they care about. And that way, like, they won't ask the question. They'll just be like, oh, I should go read more. I should have known this already when I went to this talk. Yeah, and just keep practicing with it. We need more of the cut Lumen stickers. If I have to cut them, fine. I just don't know how to get them because I don't know who has the.
I still have some too. I can.
I mean, if you want to
I
send
don't
them,
know
but
if I'm to you, but
we
Yeah,
went through.
Lauren should be able to order them.
Okay, I didn't know if Lauren had. I assume Lauren should have them, but I didn't. I'll bug her directly since she sent me the stickers for this, but she didn't have the Lumen stickers. I had mine already. People did take the circles, but obviously they took the shapes first because they're much cooler.
Yeah.
Uh,
If she, gives any like responsive around like budgeting for it, just let me know, and I'll make sure there's money.
Other than that, I will have my Fridays this week with the change that conference time, or at least speaker slots don't have to get made up is the new policy. So I will still have my Dockyard Fridays to help you, Paul, and help Hans if he wants to change the demos or anything, stuff like that. But that's all I'll have. I'm still on client time otherwise, because the person who I'm doing parental leave coverage for is out already.
So just to make sure, I've got 2 action items out of that. One is, Luke, you're going to follow up with Lauren about stickers, and I'll.
Yeah, I dropped it in the general marketing channel, but there's no follow-up. I'll message her directly.
Okay, I'll also ping her if I don't see any response. If the response is, that's something we can do, then we'll come back around to you, Brian. And then the other thing was updating the README text and other documentation. Is there anybody who wants to take on that task?
some of that will be kind of spread out into multiple tests. I think like I'm gonna need to revamp a lot of the install instructions once I have the cogen stuff being merged, because that's going to include how to fetch like the pre-built tool chains and things like that. But the parts that probably should be updated are, I can go through and strip out the information I dumped in there way early last year that is stale enough where it's not useful anymore, out of the main README. But then we should probably think about like, okay, what sort of information has been most useful when talking with people at conferences and the like, and try and get that front and center in that README. Ultimately, we're going to move all that kind of stuff to the website anyways, and try and keep the main project README fairly simple and focused on the development. But for now, that's also kind of our landing page. So we just need to update it enough so that it's not borderline misleading.
All right, I think I'll just sort of ping everybody a couple of days before. Well,
the most critical part of it is like getting the install instructions probably updated a little bit, and then stripping out like the parts about LVM for the moment, I think is the main thing there, because that's caused some friction for people who didn't read the note that it's not something you have to do yet. And then once the cogen branch is merged, then all that will be updated anyways.
Yeah, plus we'll have the pre-builts then, so it won't even be like the current version of the instructions.
It won't be the same.
Gave me, so.
I mean, we'll still need a version of it for people that want to build with LVM.
Yeah, I'm curious if we should shove that in the crates README though, and not the main README, because it's like a thing we don't want the main people knowing about.
Oh, I already started a doc folder at the root, or docs rather, where I'm going to put some things like building LVM, how to build the release tools that I put together for both LVM and for the Lumen compiler as well. So I have basically a little packager now for assembling like a pre-built Lumen compiler for a particular target. There's a few pieces I still need to add to it, like adding additional targets. So if you want to generate a Lumen build for x86 and also contains like the tool chains for building for x86-64 Linux or for WASM, those are separate. Those have some separate components, namely the runtime libraries are different.
So
The
obviously,
LLVM part of it is the same.
we can cross compile target WASM32, but with like the parts of LLVM we're using, the parts of Rust we're using, can I will the Lumen we produce on a Mac also be able to build for Linux, or is it like the traditional OS x86 is still, it's better to do a native build on those machines?
Yeah, so x86-64 on a Mac and Linux are fundamentally pretty different, so they're not very portable.
Well, I get that they're not compatible, but I didn't know if they could, that one Lumen could contain both, the way it can also.
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying, is that
Okay.
that basically the way I've designed it more or less matches Rust up in that there's the host level version of the compiler, and that has like the main install that you perform when you install Lumen. And then it also has the ability to maintain target specific like libraries and tooling um, in different target toolchain folders. So that allows us to package up a bundle that has everything for a Mac to build for a Mac and for WASM. And then if they wanted to grab the tool chain for Linux as well, then they could go download that from like the releases page or wherever. Eventually we could have a nicer tool like RustUp, but we don't really need that initially. The tool that I put together is just for building ahead of time a package like that.
Is there any way to make the different tool chains both like work as a Lumen up, but also be accessible through Rust up system for installing? Or is that too complicated to have both the package managers understand how to install them? Like, do we need a completely different package management system just for the Lumen tool chains? Or can we piggyback on Rust up's component system?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Rust up components is specific. That's like Rust core stuff. We can't access or hook into that, unfortunately.
I would just
It would be really cool if we could.
Yeah, if there's just an artifact management system that we could use, we wouldn't have to write our own way of getting it off of GitHub, which would be kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a little bit annoying, but it's actually not too difficult as long as the way we publish releases has a predictable structure.
Isn't ASTF modular? You can install modules for different languages, I think.
For what? I'm sorry?
ASDF.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
ASDF is a possibility.
Yeah, we can do a Lumen plugin, but that's kind of weird in that a lot of times they depend on other ones, because like the Erlang support in ASDF is just using curl. So like then curl had to solve that problem. It's not that ASDF itself has an artifact store. They depend on the language specific one, and they're just wrapping it in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it handles the version management pretty well, but it definitely does not handle anything like tool chain management that ends up being baked into whatever tool you're using.
Yeah, so we could have a Lumen plugin in ASDF, but we would still have to solve the how does Lumen up manage it.
Yeah, I think probably the simplest way to do it is literally just post a metadata file along with the release. Every time we publish a release, that has both the Lumen installers for each target that we support, all the tool chain packages, and then that metadata file. And then what happens is like our little CLI utility just goes and fetches the latest release from GitHub, grabs that metadata file and uses that to figure out, okay, which tool chains are available, what's the URLs to those, and everything else.
Yeah, until GitHub generalizes their their like built-in package thing that's built on top of releases, you know, the thing they did for
Yeah.
Node. I think we're stuck on just doing it on top of release ourselves.
Yeah, I was really kind of bummed that they don't provide any method to like customize that or provide your own like package system on top of it. It's just like we support a couple of these package ecosystems and that's it.
I mean, we could potentially. I mean, the problem is we're such a narrow focus even after Elixir, like a hex equivalent. I mean, the other option is see if there's some weird way to extend hex and talk to the core team. But I think the GitHub thing's good enough for now.
Yeah, I think that we don't need anything super fancy anyways. Once you've installed Lumen, there's two things you really need. One is the ability to update it painlessly, and then to be able to install toolchain for target you don't have out of the box. And what we need from a CLI tool to do those two things is not much. Honestly, the most complex portion of that is just getting the metadata from GitHub to be able to automate. Is there an update for Lumen? What version is it? And then being able to fetch those packages. But the installer portion of it is actually really straightforward. And it's basically what I already built.
I'm going to cut in really quick because I want to give Hans and Brian, both Brian's, chances to update if they've got stuff to share. Hans,
Yeah.
do you want to do your update?
Yeah. So I, the last part of last week, I scrambled a bit to try to get like a demo-ish thing working for Luke, but that didn't work out either due to various circumstances. But I'm going to try to get at least something done relatively soon so we can have something, I don't know, maybe something a bit bigger that interacts with more things was the idea. So I was working on that. I've put that a bit aside and now working on just fixing, rewriting a part that's been causing me problems for a long time. So I'm doing it a different way, which will hopefully cause less problems for me. Yeah, so, but I haven't gotten that much time to work on. I mean, yeah.
Another thing that I think would be good to try and focus on soonish, because I know I'll need it sooner rather than later, is some of the type system aspects of this, or at least surfacing a little bit more of a rigorous system for types in EIR, because I've got my own layer of that in MLIR because it has a type system and I'm making use of that because I can do some nice optimizations just lowering stuff without really having to do any work. But if we had like proper types, there's really just a ton we could do with it, I think. But I don't know what the low-hanging fruit is there, so to speak. I mean, I kind of have a rough idea, big ideas, but I haven't looked into it seriously enough to really know where it falls apart. Namely, like, I am interested in doing sort of local bidirectional inference for things that we know types for already. And within a module, especially, because we can do some intra-procedural type inference, just looking at other functions in the module. And then when gathering all the modules for the system together and kind of doing a link, that's also an opportunity to review the types that we've sort of arrived at for those different functions. So if we've got intra-procedural call or inter-procedural calls where the callee has a type that we inferred, but a caller is now calling it with something that's like a different type that's new, introduces some new information, like that tells us, okay, we have to roll those optimizations back. But it may also be that we don't contradict that type information and can actually like use that to optimize code away or do something more interesting when we're actually doing the final link. And that might get us quite a ways before we start to hit the limits of that too, you know? And we talked a little bit about that before, particularly like BIFs being useful places for type inference,
Yeah,
working
and
backwards from those. But
I spent some time a little while ago just like thinking about it and like trying to like think of a system that would work well. So I think I at least have like a couple of trailheads where to like start working on it. But
yeah.
I mean, at least I need to finish this thing first because this is going to cause problems. If I don't fix it, it's going to cause problems on some parts of the standard library.
Got it.
So yeah.
What is the issue that you found?
So it's
before you go there, it's okay. I want to get the two Brian's updates in, and then we can come
Sure.
back. We've got 10 minutes before recording starts, so stops. So Brian C, you want to go?
I don't have any updates this week.
Okay, Brian J.
I also don't have any updates besides like I'm gonna try to get back into things this weekend.
Okay. Sorry, I just want to make sure you guys had a chance, Hans and Paul, back where you were.
Yeah, so the issue is in some patterns of IR, when there is a block that's being captured as a function in a certain IR construct in a certain pattern, then it's gonna like the simplification path is gonna generate the wrong IR, so values are not properly in scope. So that's what's wrong. So I'm just like doing things a whole another way because this way I'm doing right now has been causing problems for a long time. And I'm pretty close to done, so I'm feeling good about this new one. I'm cutting down on the lines of code and
Is there anything
a lot of simplification.
like significant from those changes that's going to fall out that I need to be aware of, or?
No, it's going to be exactly the same on your end. It's going to generate the exact same IR. It's just going to be like a bit more general of a solution to the problem.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luke, I don't know on Friday what time will necessarily work best, but for me it'd probably be in the afternoon because I have meetings in the morning.
Too late. It would be Eli would be back from school, so I go to pick him up from the bus at like 3:15 Central, so it has to be
Okay.
before then or it won't work out.
Yeah, I think that should be fine. There'll be a couple hours in there between when my last meeting is and when you have to go. Plus, I'm an hour ahead of you, so
Right.
I'm thinking probably like 12 or 12:30ish my time.
It's
So
11. Yeah, that'll be fine. That'll give us plenty of time.
but we can pair up and then I can walk you through whatever parts you're most interested in first and see where it takes us.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else to cover together?
I don't have anything else at the moment. I will try and post on the Slack channel here probably tomorrow or the next day, depending on if I'm feeling better by tomorrow morning or not. Sorry, Jesus. On whether or not I get the workaround I have in mind is suitable or not, like solves the problem. It should. I can't imagine what else could possibly be causing the errors I'm seeing. But you know how it goes. So.
Well, feel better.
Well, thanks.
Right. I'm gonna jump off. I don't know if you guys had more stuff you wanted to discuss together, but I feel like Paul,
See you guys later.
stop talking. So.
Bye.
Bye.